Welcome to the 9th video tutorial for the Skyrim Creation Kit, Lighting. The brilliant Nate Perkypile is beamed down to give us an illuminating look at the best practices for brightening up our levels. Here's Nate.
The main thing you need to know when lighting is the main types of lights used in Skyrim. The first type is an omni-light, and this just casts a sphere of light and it doesn't cast any shadows. It's the most common light used because it's the cheapest and it's the most flexible. The next kind is a shadow casting omni. And you can see these have the purple cross in the middle, so they're easy to find. These generate a lot of polys though, and you can only have 4 visible at any time, so be careful with how many you use. The next kind is a spotlight. And spotlights are more useful for things like skylights where you need a specific direction of light. And if you press L, you can toggle the markers on all the lights, and you'll see, for instance, the sphere around the Omni, and that's the area that affects, or the cone for the spotlight, and that's the area that it affects. The main things that you're going to need to know when lighting are the hotkeys. So besides L, there's S, which changes the scale of a light. And you can see that shrinks the sphere or makes it bigger by clicking and dragging up and down. If you hold Control-Alt-S, it scales the brightness of the light. And another one that only applies to shadow casters is Alt-B. And it's called the depth bias for the shadows. And this is something that you need to watch out for. So if you ever get any artifacts on your shadowing, such as little hatches like this that you'll see inside the bowl, you need to click on the shadow caster nearby and then click and drag up with Alt-B, and it'll push it out. So sometimes you have to push it out pretty far, but you can see if you go too far, sometimes it'll make things look like they're floating. So watch out for that. Also, with spherical omnis that cast shadows, you need to watch out for this line in the middle. And this is because the shadow caster is 2 half spheres that are stitched together. So sometimes you'll get these holes like this. So to fix it, you just rotate the light and then make sure that line is somewhere where it's not obvious. Otherwise you'll get like a wall with a line of light going through it, and it'll look really strange. And sometimes you'll get too many of these marker lines everywhere, so don't forget to press L sometimes and just turn off those lines. It's a lot easier to work with, and your scene gets a lot less cluttered. And you can just eyeball the size of the lights usually, and it's pretty obvious how big that light is. And also, every time you scale it, it's going to be adjusting that depth bias value on its own, so watch out for that. The next thing you're going to need to know is the common effects that are used with lights. So one of the most common ones is the mists. So as you can see, if you bring a mist near a light, it's going to pick up the color. However, if you drag it near a shadow caster, it does nothing. It'll only take the default ambient color in the cell and the directional light of the cell. So to get around that, if you're by a shadow caster, you can bring up the batch action menu, click on set external mittens, and then find a light, which in this case is default candle, and then click do. And this will apply the foggy color from the candle, so then it won't just be the blue that's the default in the cell. But you would only want to do that by shadow casters, because this will prevent things like fireballs that the player is casting from also picking up in the mists. But it's the only way to make it work by shadow casters, so it's good to know. And another kind of external emittance thing that you need to know is for something like a glow fill from a sun hole. So if you had this beam coming down here, and you wanted the sun from outside to be reflected, you can bring up that batch action menu again, click on exterior light and go to the effects category, and these are the ones that we commonly used. And for the beams, we usually used this one here, Cave Blue Skylight, which has a bit of a blue accent to it. And if you bring up the preferences menu, you can click and drag the time of day to see what kind of an effect this has. And then you can place a regular Omni light near it. And you can assign a region to that as well. We usually use the sunlight white region for this. That way we're casting white light, but then for the effects we have a blue tint to it. And then you can see the effect that has by dragging the time of day again and seeing what that does. And don't forget to press M to toggle the markers to see what it looks like without all of your lights and markers in the scene getting in the way. And another thing that's good to have on all the time is the fog. So you can toggle that by pressing 6, and that'll turn that on and off. And sometimes that has a huge impact on the scene, so I would recommend keeping that on at all times, along with the effects button, to make sure that your external emissions are getting updated. Otherwise, it'll just have they'll look invisible. And the next thing you need to know is how to set the templates. So to do that, click on Cells and go to your Lighting tab. Here you'll see what template it's using. And you can change these and see what kind of an effect it has. You could search, for instance, mines and see what kind of difference that has. So if we go over to this area here, and what would mine template close look like? And apply that. And you'll see things are much more foggy and dark now. But then if we did something like, Azura Star, which is going to be much brighter, and apply that, things are going to be a little crazy. So you can also uncheck any of these and then set your own values for each one of these. And one thing to note is that you can change the ambient and it won't actually do anything. The only thing that's used for is the directional ambient lighting. We'll get the base color based on what you pick for the actual ambient. So make sure that you make these 6 colors the ambient that you want, because that is only a base selection. And the other thing that you're going to want to set after you pick a template you like, and let's just go with Bleak Falls Medium for now, and that's the image space. In a lot of cases, we just left this to default because we can control the color and the lighting a lot more by just changing the lights and the colors. But you can do some exaggerated things, like the Azura Star one is very obvious, how the depth of field is a lot more exaggerated. Or you can go somewhere like the Falmer, where the Falmer are, and get like this blue tint and a bit of a haze. Or there's a crypt, where things get really contrasty and desaturated. So just find the one that you like and pick it and hit apply, and that'll be in every single part of the dungeon. But if you want to change what it is in part of the dungeon, you can zoom out and take a look at your dungeon, and then bring up the Show Hide menu, and then click on Portals and Rooms. Once you have the portals and rooms up, you can click on a room bound and bring up the Batch Action menu, and you can click Set Lighting Template. And then this allows you to change the template on a room-by-room basis. So the main thing that is used for is we have 3 different templates for most of them. You can see that here. Like there's Bleak Falls Barrow, medium, far, and close. And this just pushes the fog values to different distances. And you can see what kind of difference this has here, where if we go to this, small area here, and what if we pick far? So make sure you have the sky on here and click apply. You'll see how it's a lot flatter now, and the door and the hall don't look that great. But then if you change it to close, things will have a lot more contrast and you can grasp the forms in 3D a lot better. But then if you went to a big room with that, it would probably look a little weird because it goes and gets a little too flat. So then you'd want to change that to far when you're in that room, or maybe medium. So you can adjust that by using that batch action on the room markers. So you could have close here, medium here, or if you have an epic room, go to far. You can also double click on any of these, go to bound data, and change the image space for even more variety. If it's at default, it'll just use whatever is in your cell. And it's only going to change when you go through the room markers that have these settings on them. So now I'm going to actually light the cell. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to pick the template that I want. So I'm going to go pretty straightforward here, pick Bleak Falls Barrow Medium, and apply that. Has a nice balance of fog values, and it's pretty standard for Nordic dungeons. So next I'm going to take default torch NS, and put that by these lights and make them a little bit brighter. Once I get a brightness and a size I like, I'm going to copy that around to the nearby lights. And tweak their size a little bit. Switch over to a candle light. Useful to keep the lights that you like off to the side here. And put the candle light over here. Want it a little bit lighter, so switch to the desaturated version. Here, I want a skylight, so I'm going to select the ceiling, switch it to a variant with O1C. This creates a skylight.
Just one more tutorial to go. In our final entry, Darrell Brigner stops by once again to give us the hookup on World Hookups. But first, if you haven't already, visit creationgit.com. It's a good place.